Do you remember that person a couple weeks back might have hit you up and said, hey, I got a couple spots open in my fantasy football league. I'd love for you to join. It's going to be a great time. Got X amount of people. It's X amount of dollars to get in. Winner, first place, second place, third place gets X amount of dollars. However that league is set up, there's millions of different ways. But you said yes. You said, you know what? I'm going to get on it early this season. Time isn't there yet, I'm going to get my fantasy fees together. I'm going to get my research together when the time comes. Well, I'm here to tell you to stop that right now because the time has come. It is the perfect time for you to start your fantasy football research. It is the perfect time if you are the commissioner of your fantasy football league to get that league started. Start sending out those invites, making sure people get at least a portion of their fantasy fees paid so that they already are locked in and ready to go. There's nothing worse than coming to the draft day. And there's that one member, that 12th member, that 10th member, that last person to fill up your league. On draft day, they back out. On draft day, they got something better to do. On draft day, you're scrambling, trying to find a 10th. Don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Now is the time to get started. Send out those invites, but more importantly, get your research started. Good news is, you've turned in to the Huddle Chat Sports Fantasy Football Huddle, and we appreciate you. However, this right here is the tool that's going to sharpen your tool bag. This is the tool that's going to help you get over that speed bump. This right here is the tool that's going to help you hoist that fantasy trophy, put that fantasy belt around your waist, and take those bragging rights for the next season, the next 365 days. But you got to get started somewhere, and now is the perfect time. As I said before, this is the Huddle Chat Sports Show presented by the Fantasy Football Huddle, and I am your host, as always, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo is my Nindo. Draft day is right around the corner. And speaking of drafts, we're going to be talking about the NFL Draft 2022 that just passed recently. Rookies always have a big impact in fantasy football. You've got over the last few years, over the last 10 seasons in a row, a rookie running back has finished top 12 all 10 seasons. Over the last 9 seasons in a row, a rookie wide receiver has finished top 24 all 9 seasons. Rookies have an instant impact, and it's always hard to judge rookies kind of going into that realm of the unknown. If you're somebody that's kind of like myself that likes risk aversion, rookies, typically you stay away from them. But there are a few very enticing, very tantalizing rookies coming out of this draft. And we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about the immediate impact that they're going to have in fantasy football. Of course, before we get started, as always, before we get kicked off, I want to invite you, if you do, no peer pressure if you don't, I don't hate you if you don't, but if you do, now's the time to sit down, get comfortable, grab a notepad, but more importantly, smoke them if you got them. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, and we're getting ready to get started. We're going to be talking about those tantalizing rookies coming out of the 2022 NFL Draft, and before we do, let's kick it off to the intro, but let's get right into the news, baby. All right, kicking things off, we're going to be starting with my third most tantalizing, most enticing rookie coming out of this NFL draft. I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers' new stud at the wide receiver position, Christian Watson. The man is 6'5" with 4.3 speed and a 39-inch vertical. He's athletic and he's big. He's a perfect target for one of the most accurate and inventive quarterbacks in the NFL today. You're looking at pairing this young man with Aaron Rodgers, and at the same time, you're looking at Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling leaving Green Bay and going on to greener pastures. That's leaving over 210 receiver targets available. And do you think Adam Lazard is going to be able to step up and take even a portion of that 210 targets? Christian Watson has absolutely zero competition for targets. Adam Lazard is a medium level wide receiver 3 that you'd be happy to have in the slot maybe on your team. You got Robert Tonyan at tight end, who's not going to be stealing a lot of targets, may steal a couple of touchdowns, but that's really all he's been good for is that touchdown production. You're looking at Christian Watson being able to come in and make an immediate impact for a quarterback who's looking for a new favorite target, for an offense that's looking for a new number one wide receiver. You forget Devontae Adams was one of the best wide receivers in the league. Christian Watson can easily step up for that and take over that Devontae Adams role. You're looking at the work that he's already doing in training camp, and critics are raving about Christian Watson coming out of Green Bay. I think this man fits perfectly with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers scheme, and Christian Watson is going to see immediate fantasy football explosion. You're going to look at the numbers he's going to put up in those first few weeks, and he's going to be that kind of wide receiver that people are going to be mad that they didn't take in those late rounds because they didn't know his name. Christian Watson. Remember that man's name. He is going to be one of those tantalizing rookies that seriously can change your fantasy football roster. Moving on to number 2, we're going to be going to another pass catcher who can seriously make a change on a fantasy football roster and seriously make a change in the real life roster of the Atlanta Falcons. I'm talking about Drake London, who's the new wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, you do look at the fact, of course you got to preface this, you got to look at the negatives first. Now you look at Marcus Mariota coming in and being the new quarterback. It's not the same Matt Ryan that they had, the same steady, consistent quarterback that they've had for the past decade. You're looking at Marcus Mariota coming in, and honestly, we haven't seen Marcus Mariota do much for quite a few years. He's been a backup quarterback. He's had some splashes and some crazy wildcat plays in Las Vegas, but Marcus Mariota, since losing his job to Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee, really hasn't done much in the NFL. So you're looking at a lot of unknowns with his quarterback, unlike what you're getting with Christian Watson with Green Bay. But the good thing about Drake London is he has absolutely zero competition for catches outside of Kyle Pitts. And you also look at what the Atlanta Falcons offense has been able to do in supporting their number one wide receiver. You look at last season and you say Matt Ryan did struggle on his numbers. However, he did miss his number one wide receiver over the entirety of the season for the most part. In Atlanta right now, over 51% of the target share is up for grabs. And a rookie wide receiver, as I mentioned before, has finished top 24 in 9 seasons straight. You're looking at Christian Watson, you're looking at Drake London, and you're looking at the volume that they're both getting ready to take and the target share that they're both getting ready to receive, and they both would have to try extremely hard to not be fantasy relevant this season. Drake London is another wide receiver coming for the Atlanta Falcons that I think is going to make an extremely big splash in fantasy football due to his high floor. As somebody that likes to chase risk aversion, a high floor is really something you're searching for. Somebody that you can guarantee he may not have a lot of boom weeks, but he's not going to have very many bust weeks whatsoever just because of the high volume and the consistency at which they're going to be targeted at. Now, moving on to the number one most tantalizing, most enticing rookie coming out of the 2022 NFL draft. I've got to take a minute and look over at Breece Hall coming out of the New York Jets. Might be the best player the Jets have drafted in my entire lifetime. Breece Hall is one of 6 running backs ever to get an elite 99 grade from Next Gen Stats coming out of the draft. The other 5 running backs, you ask? Jonathan Taylor, the greatest running back in football right now. Saquon Barkley, previously been a number 1 running back in football. Melvin Gordon has previously been a top 3 running back in football. You look at also Travis Etienne, who did not get to do much last season because of injury. However, Travis Etienne is a freak and a natural athlete. And then you also have Christian McCaffrey as the 5th other running back that had that 99 elite grade from Next Gen Stats. You're also looking at the fact that Breece Hall is the 2nd most athletic running back to come out of the draft since 2006. They got an athletic freak out in New York, and it's something that they absolutely needed, a game-changing difference maker on their offense. Now, I'm not saying that Breece Hall is going to take the Jets to the playoffs or even to success, but Breece Hall can and will take your fantasy football roster to the playoffs and to find success. You're also looking at the fact that a rookie running back has finished top 15 in fantasy points per game in the last 10 season straights. Breece Hall is an immediate favorite to continue that trend. Breece Hall, you know how much I love my running backs and how hard it is to find a running back, especially once those big names come off the board. Breece Hall is one of those people that can completely change your fantasy roster, and you could seriously find success with him. Now, that's going to wrap up my most tantalizing, most enticing rookies coming out of that 2022 NFL draft. Those are players that I'm definitely going to have highlighted on my draft board, especially when you come into those later rounds where they're going in their current ADPs. Now, before we get out of here, I want to remind you, don't be that guy. We're starting a new trend here around the Fantasy Football Huddle, and it's going to be hashtag DBTG. Don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. I want you to give me your funniest, dumbest, most questionable moments that have ever happened to you in fantasy football. Whether it was you yourself or whether it was somebody that was in your league. Give me a story and remind the viewers, don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. I got you one right off tops. Earlier in the draft, we were speaking about draft day and not having that one person and potentially that one person being able to ruin your entire draft. You got ribs on the grill. You got brats ready to go. You got people showing up, bringing sides. Everything is going right. And then that one person in the league hits me up. I'm in the backyard. I got the whole setup. Canopies, TVs out in the backyard. I got it all going. Man hits me up and says, I've decided that I don't have time for fantasy this season. I'm not really that kind of person that even pays that much attention to football. And so 1 hour before we're supposed to get the draft order, which, as you know, if you do a random draft order, you get the draft order 1 hour before the fantasy draft. So that means we are 2 hours before the fantasy draft is supposed to be kicking off, and I'm scrambling, hitting up everybody that I can in my Facebook and my Twitter, having everybody else hit up anybody they know, your brother, sister's, mother's, cousin, anybody that's out there. Can you get them into a fantasy league? I'll even pay half of their fantasy fees. We end up getting somebody, and this person was completely terrible and honestly ruined the integrity of at least a portion of the season. And I can tell you that we still don't have that league going anymore today. That man ruined the league. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be that guy. If you don't have time for fantasy, let the commissioner know. It's not a commitment that you have to take when somebody asks you, do you want to join? You can obviously say no. But don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Don't ruin someone's draft. And as a commissioner, do your damn research. Don't let no fools in your league that can ruin the integrity of your league. Don't be that guy, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo as my Nindo, and this has been the most tantalizing rookies in the NFL draft coming into Fantasy 2022. Now, don't forget to click on one of these couple videos coming in to get more fantasy research. We have fantasy videos coming out hot off the presses every week, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you tune into them. As always, I'm your host, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo as my Nindo. And remember, we're never out-hustled, never outperformed, and never outworked. Thank you all so much for tuning in today, and I can't wait to see you next time. I'm the fatty. You have a good one, ladies and gentlemen. Peace. Thank you.